Soon.
Yes, and just so welcome to Winterize Now, prepare for spring. I would like to turn it over to Rex Muir. He was just speaking a moment ago to tell us more about Citrus Heights Water District.
Um, Thank you very much, Cheryl, and thank you everybody for being here today. This is going to be a great class. I am personally interested in this one because it is winter coming up, and it's time to prep for your upcoming months with your garden and your soils and all that good stuff. So this is going to be something I'm going to be particularly interested in. I want to mention a couple of the programs that we have available to our customers at Citrus Heights Water District. One of the main ones is the WaterWise house calls for your outside irrigation equipment. We can come out for free and check your system for coverage, make sure your heads are working properly. And if we see any deficiencies, we can write those up for you and include them in a report along with a recommended watering schedule for your controller. And we can even set your controller if you'd like to. Now, let's just say you have an older controller and it's a bit outdated. If you were thinking about replacing that, contact us. We do have a program. It's a direct install weather-based irrigation controller program, and it's available to our customers. Just go check our website at chwd.org, and you can find all the information and sign up there. We also have a few other rebate programs I'll mention real quick, and then I want to let the experts talk. Our rebate programs, we have a pressure reducing valve rebate program for up to $150 for our customers. We do have inherently high pressure in our district, sometimes anywhere from 80 to 90 plus pounds. So that's something you could install, bring your pressures down, and it's a lot easier on your plumbing. We also have a high efficiency clothes washer rebate that is run through SMUD at this time for $50 for any newer high efficiency clothes washer rebate or clothes washer that qualifies for the rebate. And we also have our long-standing high efficiency toilet rebate for up to $50 if you replace a new toilet. So that's some of our programs. If you want to know more, again, you can go to our website at chwd.org or to waterefficiency@chwd.org to find out more information. Enough of me jabbering. Let's turn it over to Cheryl and the experts, and I welcome you all to the webinar, and take it away.
Thank you, Rex. I appreciate that.
Of course.
So my name is Cheryl Buckwalter. My company's Landscape Liaisons, and I'm a landscape designer, educator, and consultant. On the left-hand side, you can see a gobbledygook alphabet soup of some of my certifications, but it's not about me today. It is about you learning how to winterize your garden, and you're going to be hearing from two experts from the Sacramento region. A few housekeeping things, shall we say. Everyone is muted and your cameras are off. We are recording this session, okay? This webinar is being recorded. During the webinar, should you have any questions, there is a little chat box that you can enter questions into, and at the end of the webinar, we will answer those for you. Also, soon after the webinar ends, you'll be sent a survey, and we would really appreciate it if you would complete that survey. Citrus Heights Water District and all of us as educators and landscape professionals always have more to learn. We learn every day. So be sure to check the website, as Rex had mentioned, for future webinars as well as the recorded session. And I will end with technology. While we make every single effort to deliver a professional, straightforward, easy to hear and understand and see webinar, technology sometimes gets in the way. So should something happen, please just bear with us and we will do our best to take care of the situation right away. So here on your screen, you can see now where you can obtain these recordings. So they are on the YouTube channel here, but it's easiest probably just to go to Citrus Heights Water District's website to check those out. So I am now going to turn it over to our presenters to talk about winterizing your garden.
Welcome, everyone. First off, I want to introduce my presenting partner, Marcia Jimenez Scott of Marcia Scott Landscape Design. She is a landscape designer and arborist who lives and works in the Sierra Nevada foothills. She's been in landscaping for 30 years. So whenever I'm stuck, I will call up Marcia and I will pick her brain because I know that she's seen it all. She's worked in every gardening zone from the Bay Area all the way up to Tahoe Alpine. So Marcia really packs some dirt cred, and you're gonna benefit from her experience on all those levels today.
Well, thanks so much, Sule. I want to introduce my partner presenter, Sule Tranquilli, a landscape designer known for her lawn removal crusade. Sule once helped produce 9 garden tours in 5 years. After evaluating literally thousands of Sac Valley front yards, Sule has seen the good, the bad, and the really, really, really scary. Go for it, Sule.
Thanks, Marcia. Today we will cover how to prepare your garden for Sacramento Valley winters, and we'll talk about how to get a head start on this winter and also preparing your garden for a fabulous next year. We will discuss what to do and exactly why to do it. Just as a little note in this presentation, you'll hear us use the terms garden, yard, and landscape interchangeably. That means that these are all terms for the same thing. That's your garden space. So specifically today, we're going to talk about mulching, soil amendments and leaves. We're going to get into fall and winter plant care. And last but not least, very important, irrigation checks and fixes.
So another reminder, if you have questions, enter them into the chat, please, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. Thanks. Next, let's talk water. We'll be brief, but water is very important to a successful landscape. The simplest way is to start in the winter. How we make our landscapes more water efficient? We start planning, take action now to be ready for spring, and then that hot summer. Save water in your landscape with a super effective attitude toward gardening. Water scarcity is not a winter issue in your landscape, but our landscapes use the most of all our households' water, 2/3 or more of the total bill that we're paying every couple of months. So we want our landscapes to be as water efficient as possible, and you should know that our landscapes need differing amounts of water throughout the year. The way you treat your garden in winter will have a direct effect on how much water it uses in summer. These little droplets numbers roughly represent the Sacramento region. They reflect statistics about evapotranspiration. It's a big word, yes, but evapotranspiration means the loss of water through the plant leaves and the surrounding soil. The droplets quickly show us that the highest water loss for plants is in July and directly relates to the amount of water you have to replace to keep your plants from thriving. Plant water loss rises from spring to peak loss in July, then reduces as the weather cools, just like with our bodies. Note that in Sacramento, we generally keep our landscape irrigation systems off during the cool rainy months of November through March. Autumn and winter are a slowing down, a resting. Sule will begin to teach you about some natural systems which are healing garden practices in the winter. Sule?
Well, let's talk about mulching, soil amendments, and leaves. Oh my. So if there's one thing that we want you to leave with today is that mulch is your biggest and best garden helper for water efficiency. Fall and winter is the best time to replenish your mulch. And you can think of mulch as a blanket that actually tucks in your plants for the winter. If you apply mulch now, your next year's garden is going to be way more fabulous. So mulch being your #1 best garden helper, it's going to increase water efficiency, and it's good for the long-term health of your plants. Mulch is just an organic blanket of particles that are small enough to break down and nurture the soil. Generally, mulch has not begun to decay, but mulch becomes your soil. That's a big fat deal for us. So here's a wonderful fall scene where this person is preparing to mulch their garden. But there's one little thing we want to note in this picture that we don't think is cool. We do not recommend weed fabric or plastics underneath mulch. And you can see in the background that there's a fabric underlayment that the mulch was going to go on. But what we say is these non-organic underlayments become a maintenance headache in the future. For right now, they limit air and water movement in the soil, but later they'll shred, they'll turn into unsightly pieces that stick up and that you'll need to remove. They might even become tripping hazards. That's a true story for me. We also notice that with these weed cloths and fabrics, the weed seeds will still collect on top of the fabric and they'll still germinate, unfortunately. So they don't do a lot of good. So weed fabric, most of all, worst of all, prevents your mulch from decaying and reaching the soil to become nutrition to your plants. That's a big fat deal, very key. So we don't recommend weed fabrics of any kind. But why else should you mulch? Mulch will store water and maintain moisture levels in your soil, but the big deal is that mulch breaks down into soil nutrients over the winter. It becomes your soil. It'll protect plant roots, holds that soil in place during winter storms that bring rain and water that can dislodge open soils. And it can help reduce your active winter weeds, the annual bluegrasses, the oxalis, all of those pests, and on into spring and summer, helps control those weeds as well. But mulch and compost are the first keys to a healthy garden. Think of mulch as a soil blanket, holding in moisture, modulating soil temperatures through weather extremes. Mulch, we're going to call it insulation for your garden. Arborist mulch has been scientifically proven to be the very best mulch. And this is because arborist mulch has many different sized chunks and shapes that break down at varying rates to quickly improve your soils. The best part about arborist mulch is that it's free. We love that. Other mulches that you might find for sale or round and about may last longer, but they don't improve your soils as quickly. This includes the shredded barks and chip barks and things like that. They're fine, but be very careful. A few of them are more flammable, such as the shredded bark. So watch for that. We do ask that you avoid colored dyed wood pellet mulches. They add very little to your soil health. The reason is that we don't actually know the sources for the wood and the dyes. So safety and toxics are a big concern. One of the things that is becoming very popular right now in the Sacramento Valley as we see people remove their lawns and go for lower water plants is gravel, using gravel as a mulch. That's a big thing we're noticing. But we want you to note that gravel does not quickly improve your soil health. It takes a very long time for rock and stone to break down. So gravel is not mulch. Gravel gets really hot in our Sacramento summers. It heats up the soils and it even cooks tender plant roots. This is something that we often don't see. It's happening underneath the surface. But you would have to water a lot more to keep soils cool for those roots and keep that moisture available for them to stay healthy. This is not a water efficient mulch. Gravel, stone, rock, rubber chunks, artificial turfs, these are not mulch. They aren't good for your soils. They don't break down to feed your plants. So for a healthy garden, please avoid gravels for mulch. There are, of course, are always exceptions. Stone and gravel mulches could be used within 5 feet of a house or building if you're firescaping, and that will require a little more in-depth research, but keep that in mind. All right, just a reminder, a beautiful garden scene. Note that the path is gravel because gravel is for paths. Walk on gravel, mulch your plants, all right? Cactus and succulents are the exception. They don't like rich soils, but otherwise, keep it to mulch in the garden. We're moving on to soil amendments, and these are just soil additions. Don't be afraid of the big words, amendments. What do I have to know? I need a horticulture degree. You don't. There are just two things that you can use. These are very simple. It's compost or worm castings. Nature does it for you. Simply pull back the mulch. We know you have mulch now. Pull back the mulch from your plant roots and apply a top dressing of 1 to 4 inches of compost or worm castings around the root systems of your plants. You can do it now in the fall and the winter because this is the best time. When the plants awaken in the spring, these fabulous nutrients will be waiting for them as they grow in leaps and bounds. So the compost has all winter to work into its way into the soil and to release nutrients that are good for plants. So fungus happens. You see those little white threads in there? This is good. This is fungus. Sometimes they look like weird alien growths. This is just the beginning of some lovely fungus. Fungus is good in your soil. We need fungus. Do not get rid of funguses. Fungus is part of a living soil and it's very necessary for plant survival. And my point is that compost is actually an aged, decomposed organic material, all right? Compost in nature is often called humus, and it usually includes leaves. There's a little tip. So this material is aged and naturally processed, called compost. It's tiny particles full of nutrients that readily enter the soil. A good quality compost is biologically active, just like your soil. It is alive. That's a point we want you to understand. Because of this natural process of decay, compost nutrients are the safe, slow release way to enrich garden soil biology for the best plant health. This is why we do it in the fall and the winter. So it's there for the spring and summer. Easy peasy. And finally, everybody's favorite, leaves. Leave the leaves. That's our ringing cry through the fall as landscape designers. Leave the leaves. Leave your leaves to become mulch. Leaf litter in manageable amounts of about 3 inches deep will help create overwintering habitat for beneficial insects. You can use it for mulch. It becomes compost very quickly and easily. Fall leaves are also great compost starters. Leaves are mulch. So here is a slide showing some pictures of Sacramento Valley gardens with plants that are receiving the leaves as mulch. You can see this is not a problem. These are low water plants. It's fall. They're still beautiful. This is not a problem. This is nature's perfection, and this is what we're looking for. Now I can hear you. A lot of people are complaining about leaves. I have too many. What if I have all of these leaves that drown my garden? We hear this a lot. We hear your cries for help. But Marcia and I want to inspire you to think about leaves not as problems, but definitely as opportunities. There are a couple of different ways to keep the leaves in your yard. We always want to break them up. That's the key right there. Here's a couple of nice ways. You can use a mulching mower, lay them out and run the mower over them. This creates a nice looking uniform mulch that you can lay down in the landscape over the tree and shrub roots. You could also put the leaves in a trash can and use a weed whacker or a string trimmer to break them up. In essence, you're shredding the materials down in size so they'll take up less space and break down easier in the garden. So that's free compost for you right there. Leave the leaves. A couple of other quick ideas. You could also bury the leaves in a hole if you have a garden that will accommodate that. You could also use the dry leaves to start a compost pile. That is a great way to use all sorts of things that come from your household and your garden. Leaves create the necessary carbon for stable, healthy, and scentless compost piles. Fall leaves are the best compost starters. And again, it's always better if you break them up first. So our big message today is that mulch is a blanket for your soil. Please mulch. And compost is food for your soil that's already broken down and it's ready to feed the soil. Compost goes right on top of the soil. And that leaves our mulch. It's part of a natural system. Be a lazy gardener, save on fertilizers, and leave the leaves.
Remember, again, if you have questions, enter your questions into the chat box, and at the end, we'll be glad to answer them. Now I'm going to talk about some winter plant care, because you guys are probably wondering, don't I have to do some work in my garden? So the first thing that comes to mind for people in the winter is pruning. And I just want to tell you, as an arborist, trees usually do not require pruning to remain healthy. Usually you're doing pruning to correct problems or to avoid problems. Why would we want to prune in the winter in the first place? It's because pruning is easier when there are fewer leaves on plants. And sometimes we prune to make our trees safer from winter storms and make our houses and things safer. Some pruning tips for trees. Again, pruning always equals wounding. It's like cutting off your finger. It's got to heal over. On a tree, the only defense it has is to heal over those wounds with itself. Those big old target wound woods. Never top a tree to control its size. This is a big deal. The tree, if it gets to be 50 feet, it will get to be 50 feet. You pick the wrong tree if you need one that only gets to be 20 feet. Whacking off the top is not going to help. It's just going to help it die faster. Safe tree pruning. You want to know what safe tree pruning, go after the DDDs. That's a dead, diseased, and disoriented branches that are growing in the wrong direction. Know that some plants, like lavenders and sages, benefit from a fall haircut. Of course, they're not trees, but surprisingly, a plant like lavenders, the lifespan will extend if you cut them down by halfway in the late fall, or at least before late winter. And also, you can eliminate a lot of pruning. Like your hedges won't grow as fast, your perennials and shrubs won't grow as fast if you just limit how much water you give them. If they don't need a lot of water, don't give them a lot of water and they won't grow fast. You won't have to prune. Also, I just want to say we're all pretty good about, sweeping up our patios and stuff, but when cleaning the garden, please leave some seed heads, some leaves, and some dried grasses. Clean up your yard for the winter, but don't clean up everything. Habitat really needs all that debris that we see as garbage. It's debris. It's good stuff for habitat. Consider late winter pruning for at least some of your perennials. Many of them, even though dried up and ugly, support habitat during the winter. Dried seeds and berries provide food for birds. Nest-making fluff is essential for making cozy beds. This picture here is in Sulei's yard. It's a yarrow plant. You're like, oh, this landscape designer has this messy old plant. But look a little closer and you'll see the hollow stems provide winter homes for insects. More winter homes and all that soft winter growth. Little guys crawl under there and stay warm. And the dried stems provide purchases for insect egg cases. Those dried up, ugly seed old flowers provide winter food for birds. Birds and insects, they need care in the winter too. So we got to think about them if we want all that lovely wildlife outside. Clean up your yard for the winter, but please don't clean everything. You can tidy up in late winter as new spring growth supports new life. The exception to all this is edible gardens. In edible gardens, like a vegetable garden or fruit trees, you remove all your spent plants and clean up old fruit from the fruit trees, because old debris can harbor bad guys that are really detrimental to fruit and vegetable plants. So we're going to move on to water. We all know that we all need water in our yards, and winter is is critical for water savings. So one of the things you do in the winter is we need to flush all of our irrigation systems. That's drip systems or spray systems. And in this picture, this person is flushing a drip system right through a piece of pantyhose. So the person there can see what they caught. There's always stuff in the pipes, and there the debris will flow right through that pantyhose, and that person gets to see what it was, a little prize. The next is you need to clean your filters, and all systems have different types of filters. Drip systems have a big filter at the valves that like you see in the picture. Spray systems have little filters under each head, and they need to be, all the filters need to be cleaned out if you want your irrigation systems to run correctly and efficiently. May seem tedious, but now's the time. Really, all this stuff will run a lot better, has all sorts of wonderful technology in it, and you just need to keep it maintained a little bit so it can function in the spring. Next, you need to repair your leaks. Hopefully it doesn't turn into a leak as bad as the one in the top picture. The bottom one is drip irrigation repair. And we know the leaks are all something all of us tend to ignore, but address this now while your plants need water less frequently. Listen for running or hissing water. Look for puddling water. Or schedule one of those wonderful WaterSmart appointments with CHWD. They can help you if you have any problems with your systems. You can save a lot of water and some big headaches in spring if you check your irrigation system for problems and fix them this winter. So it's also a great time to update your technology on your irrigation systems. Surprisingly, you can bring it into the current century. Modern irrigation parts are simpler and a lot more water efficient than the old stuff. If you contact CHWD for a free WaterSmart house call and a landscape irrigation efficiency review, they can recommend how to upgrade your systems. For instance, you might upgrade to a free new timer. But regardless, all your irrigation timers and controllers need to be adjusted down for the winter or off. To seasonally adjust your timer, it should be really simple. Are you missing the manual or the instructions? Check online. They're really simple to find. Although timers are all different, they're all designed to be fairly user-friendly. Take the time to familiarize yourself with your timer. Become friends. Those timers get lonely in those garages. Find out how to water less in the winter. And the guys at CHWD can help you by upgrading to a free smart timer. Supplies are limited, so get yours now. Go there. These are really nice timers.
Marcia, that's fabulous. I'm imagining my timer all alone in the garage. Okay, so say you're doing all the right things that Marcia has prompted about with your irrigation, and you've turned it off in the winter, and say we have some dry spaces, dry spells in between storms. How do you know if you need to water? This picture is of a local native oak woodland in the fall. It's very dry. It looks very dry. You can see the grasses are hinting at that. That's fine for native plants, but your garden might need a little extra water. Probably not. As garden designers, we're pretty clear about that, but you might be wondering. And a lot of times people wonder and just turn on the water instead of actually checking it out. We want to teach you how to check it out. So you probably won't have to turn the water on. So how do you tell if you need water? I will show you. There are a couple of really simple low-tech ways. This is my favorite, how to check for soil moisture. It's the easiest. The technology is attached to the end of your arm. You just run outside to your garden, pull back that mulch. We know you have mulch, and grab a little bit of soil in your hand and feel the temperature of the soil. What is it against your skin? If it feels cool, then your soil is moist And
Marcia, would you like to talk about this slide? It sounds as though we've lost Sulei's sound.
Oh, sure.
everybody, am I out?
No,
Am
there
I
you
still
go.
out?
You're back. Thank you.
Mhm.
On?
Go ahead,
Yes, go
Soleil.
ahead, please, Soleil.
Okay, great. So this is your low-tech way to check for soil moisture. If you grab a little bit of soil out in your garden underneath the mulch, pull that mulch back, and you feel the temperature against your skin. If it's moist, then the plant roots can get moisture from the soil. There's plenty. It doesn't have to be dripping wet. If it's warm or neutral to the touch, then the soil is pretty dry and you may need to water supplementally. It's that easy. Boom. There's your soil moisture checker. Another really low tech way is the screwdriver test. Very simple. Grab a screwdriver, flathead is best, head out there. This works really well in lawns, particularly. If you can sink that screwdriver into the hilt easily, then your soil is moist enough and plant roots can get to that water. If it's really hard to just sink a screwdriver in, then check a couple of other spots. And if it's still hard and crusty and difficult, you can't get it to the hilt, you might need to water. These are simple, easy ways. That last method helps keep your nails clean. So I particularly like that. And lastly, here's a fun, fancy way. Say you have a lot of trees on your property that you need to check a little deeper into the soil, 10 or 12 inches. A soil probe is a nice way to do that. Soil probes go deeper and they still pull up the soil so you can check the temperature of the soil against your skin. You can take a look at it. You can see what type of things are happening and how deep. All right. So we want to inspire you to create a thriving garden.
Winterize now for a healthy landscape.
And leave the leaves.
That's great. Thank you very much. I was going to check in here and see what questions we have entered into the chat. So thank you, Marcia and Soleil. So Kathy, when I mulch in the fall and it rains during the winter, the soil keeps the moisture and suffocates the plant roots. Wouldn't it be better to mulch after the rain? And if not, how to keep the soil from being wet all the time? That's a great question. Take it away.
It is a great question, and I'll take that because I did talk about mulch. So there's a few levels to answer that question. First of all, if your leaves are in tiny pieces, smaller pieces, that will help. It'll slow down the rain droplets. Also, things won't mat up and become anaerobic on top. Anaerobic just means that things are decaying without much oxygen and they kind of stink. And your soil can become stinky and anaerobic. That's when you know you have a problem with grading and drainage. The other thing is that the mulch will actually help your soil become more friable. It will help the soil and water movement increase in there. So mulch should not cap off your soil. It's a blanket, but there's movement of air and water. So if you have some of these conditions of smelly or standing water, or you're seeing a lot of molds and slimes and plant death on the roots of your soil, and you're losing plant materials, it's a grading and drainage problem likely. So you'll need to do a little sleuthing around that. Does that help?
Thank you, Soleil. We have a few more questions here that I'll try to get to as we're wrapping up real quickly. If fungus is good, are mushrooms?
So I can answer some of that. Mushrooms are the fruiting body of a lot of fungus. So there's fungus present, but that's the sort of the end product is the mushroom. And then just like people, there are good fungi and bad ones. So it just depends. Sorry for that answer, but a lot of what you notice are good ones. Pretty much not all the mushrooms and conchs and things that you see are from good fungus, but I would have to say that most of what people notice out there are the good guys.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question. Should I prune very small sages and lavenders that are newly planted?
Lightly. You can prune them.
I would just say if there is a broken stem,
Yeah.
something like that, because really I would prune that. But generally, newly planted plants don't require pruning. And that's one of the wonderful things. You've worked to install the plants. Now you get to give a little rest to yourself and to the plants. And one more question before we close out, okay? One of my trees has aphids. Is it safe to use those dry leaves as mulch?
So I'm going to jump in here ahead of Soule and say that it has actually been proven that there can be all kinds of things wrong with your tree or your leaves, and you get bugs and whatever. When it's finally turned into mulch, it's all safe. You can just be confident that your mulch is safe, no matter where it's coming from. I would say the only exception to that might be, no, they're not even true. If you have a bad insect problem inside your wood, becomes not a problem when it gets chipped, when it gets mulched.
Ah, very good. Thank you so much. So just a quick reminder that the webinar, and there is a handout as well about mulch, mulch and compost. So that will be on the Citrus Heights Water District website. Please check back there for future webinars and educational opportunities. And then just as a reminder, there will be a survey sent to you. I want to give a special thank you to Marcia Scott, Soule Tranquilli, and Citrus Heights Water District. Rex, do you have anything else to add before we close?
I just want to echo your thank yous to everybody. That was fantastic. I got a lot of gems out of it myself. I do want to let the customers know that we actually have free froggy moisture meters available. Right now, our lobby is closed, but if you were to call us or email us, we'd be happy to arrange for you to get a free froggy moisture meter, which doesn't show up here, but there we go.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
So those are available. There's a little moisture meter on there that will tell you if there's moisture in the soil or in your potted plant even. So reach out to us for something like that. And thank you again, everybody, for attending.
Thank you very much. So we'll sign off now and stop recording. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.